You all are in the trenches. You all are doing the work, and I don't have an education degree. I have a management degree, but managing a classroom and managing employees is not a whole lot different when you think about it. I wanted to ask you something before I started. If you were to design the perfect substitute teacher, what qualities would that person have? And you can just shout them out, whatever you want to do, put it in chat, whatever.
I think it's quite interesting as a concept, because what we know about education now in terms of neuroscience is you have to create a joy-based system. So you need to engage the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual dimensions. Spiritual, I mean trust, building trusted relationships. So the substitute teachers somehow got to simulate those qualities. We know that MOOCs programs don't really work. So that raises the question of what do you get extra from one-to-one teaching, and more importantly, peer group teaching. And this, I think, is the way you can use technology to link people together in microgroups so that you continue to engage the emotional dimension and peer group pressures. And also you can use technology to build relationships of trust, whereby the knowledge is retained as opposed to immediately evaporates after leaving the learning experience. So the opportunity we have with substitute teachers or substitute teaching is the fact that we have an opportunity to be much more in depth, much more embracing, and part of this lifelong learning model where Rotarians can also act as mentors to the young people. So it's not age limited, it's actually something where it's age enhanced as part of an ikigai type concept.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. I just wanted to kind of get a thought. I wanted to give you a little background of myself. I ran a business for quite a few years. It was a small business. I was involved in it for 30 years. I ran it for the last 15 to 20. The business was sold. I needed a job. A friend of mine was an educator, well, retired now, but was an educator then. And so we can always use substitute teachers. Well, I needed a job. They needed a substitute. Yeah, okay, fine. That was in 2006, and I haven't looked back since. I am the current district I'm in. I have been there for 14 years. This is my 14th year. Did not do much last school year for obvious reasons with COVID. But I work an average of 150 plus days out of a 176-day school year in the same building. 99% of those jobs are requested. So we have a system that we can go on. I'd like to work today. Let me see what jobs there are, and I'll pick one of them and I show up. All of these are requested. I don't have any jobs that I have right now that are not requested. So there's obviously a trust that's built up between me and the teachers that are there, and which is a good thing. But sometimes that trust can be, I don't want to say taken for granted. That is not fair. Why you get into it is numerous. Most people get into it for one of two reasons. They either want a job teaching, and substituting is a way to get a foot in the door of the school district and they can get hired, or like me, it's a second career, extra income, maybe the only income. There's two different ways to do it. But why you stay is a different story entirely. And Royston, I think you hit on part of it. I've walked away from school districts. I hit a school district where it was 7th grade, so you're looking about 13-ish years old. Their main office was 4 doors down from where my room was. And a fight broke out in my room. I know better. I'm not tall. I don't fight. It's not worth it to me. So I called the office, and the answer I got was, well, if we have time, we'll come down. We're dealing with some other stuff. That was the last day I was in that school building. And 2 weeks later, I said, I'm done with that school district. Having that respect, so to speak, having the ideas where you want me to do my job, which I should do, kind of comes the other way too. Y'all need to have to help me. I use you generic. I don't mean anybody on this call or anybody you might know. What I'm telling you are 100% honest, true stories. 14 years worth. You guys have been doing it longer. You've got, I'm sure, a ton of stories and then some. Something as simple as when you're in the lunchroom. I was at the school I'm at now. First day I went in there, I brought a book with me because I read. You would not realize this about me, but I tended to be rather shy and retiring. I'll do what I have to do, but I'm not going to engage people that much. That over the years, that really did change. But one of the teachers, who unfortunately has since passed away at a very young age, she said, Dave, come over here. We've got room at our table. You wouldn't believe what that little gesture does to somebody who's just walked into a building who has no idea what's going on. Makes a big difference just on being accepted. How we work with people and how we come across. I've worked with teachers who have told me point blank, because I will say what I told you all. I am not a teacher. And they almost get into an argument with me and they said, no, you don't have an education degree, but you are a teacher. So there is a difference in the degree versus what is done. I had, and I know you can't really see it too much, this is just a plain Post-it note, one of the rectangular Post-it notes. The entire day's lesson plan for a 6th grade math and science class, so 6th grade being 11 to 12, was written on that Post-it note. Now, the lady that I subbed for knew I knew what she was talking about, and I did. And I knew where things were, and that was all great. But let's think of the inevitable happening at some point. I got into an accident on the way home, or on the way up to work, I mean, or got sick. I can guarantee you, and it sounds weird, but it does happen, a substitute for the substitute may not necessarily know what's on that lesson plan. Then we have the flip side of that. I have had lesson plans that are 8 to 10 typewritten pages long. Now, I am an anal individual, and I will freely admit it. If you give me a list of things to do, by the end of the day, they will be done. I am panicking because we're not going to get all this done. There's no way we're going to get this done. Talked to the teacher the next day. I was up there for somebody else. I talked to her the next day and I said, I am so sorry we didn't get this done. She said, oh, no, you're great. I leave extra work just in case. Well, you could have told me that. So one of us didn't have a heart attack about everything. I bring up a point with that on purpose. The work, what you think it will take the kids to do something. And this goes from kindergarten all the way up through high school. That's my experience. You believe it will take a lot more time than they will take. One worksheet will not fill an hour and 10-minute class. I guarantee it. So make sure you've got backup plans. Make sure there's something there that you can do. I had that happen to me in a social studies class. I love history. This was not hard for me. I knew I could not go further in the textbook, but I could go backwards and we could review stuff. So we spent the rest of that time after they got done doing the little worksheet they had. We spent the rest of that time, actually, sounds goofy, but it worked beautifully, acting out a part of the American Revolution battle that they were talking about. I had them set up in different groups. And it was, honestly, it was all off the top of my head. I'm not saying, look at me. I'm just saying that this is what subs go through. I don't know that you all have ever been a sub. If you do, I'm sure what I'm saying is, kind of fits. And I'm sure you've done more than what I've done on that. But it's hard sometimes to put yourself in those shoes if you haven't been down that road. It's very difficult. Little things. This lady that I subbed for this past week, we came back last Tuesday. So a week ago would have been on January 4th. So I did Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Monday and Tuesday of this week. She had got married over New Year's Eve. She was on her honeymoon. A week before that, I was up at school. I was her team teacher because the teachers are paired off. One teacher will teach math, science, and social studies. The other teacher will teach English, reading, and social studies. They do the social studies for their own homeroom. So you've got a team of teachers, 2 teachers that work together, and you flip-flop homerooms depending upon what they're doing. I was her team teacher that day. I was working with her. That lady and 2 other people had ordered lunch that day. Never asked. I was working with her. Now, I was not going to stay for lunch because it was what's called an early release day and I didn't have to. But sometimes just inviting somebody makes a big difference. Don't realize it. I will be very honest. This class, as I told Madhu, this class was the class from hell. The lack of respect was unbelievable. I got flipped off by one student using both hands. He had just got back from 5 days of out of school suspension. He had then served 5 days of in-school suspension. He was in my classroom for a grand total of 1 hour and 42 minutes. I clocked it. And he was back out on 5 days out of school suspension. Yeah, you deal with everybody. It's a public school. You deal with everybody. To give her all the credit in the world after having just thrown her under the bus about the lunch, I had emailed her what I call an after action report. We spent a week I'd spent 6 days with your kids. Here's what we got. Here's what we got done. Here's what I think they understand. Here's what I think you might need to still go on. Here are the great kids. Here are the not so great kids, all of this stuff. She replied back and she apologized. She said, I knew they were rough. I didn't think they would be that bad. Let me know when you're coming back up to school. I would like to give you a gift card for all the problems you put up with. And I replied back to her and I said, well, thank you. I'll be there Friday, tomorrow. But I said, no need, because I'm doing my job. This is what I get paid to do. She said, no, I know I don't have to. I want to. So this to me spoke volumes. It really did. But what really spoke volumes, and I'm gonna read something here, if you give me just a second to pull it up on my. So one of the students, and this kid was this young lady, I say kid, they're not kids. This young lady, you don't know the situations you're in, you don't know what they're in. She gave this to me on Monday, and she said, please read it when you get home. Okay. Dear Mr. Robinette, I know the last few days have been rough, and I just want you to know that you are the best sub I have ever had. You are amazing. We all love your stories and jokes. I love that you let us have free time on bad or good days. You are always there for us. Your passion for teaching us have inspired our lives a lot for the first time, inspired our lives a lot. Their punctuation needs a lot to be desired, but anyway, for the first time, I like learning and I want to come to school. I know that you probably hate us. No, but we love you. We all think that you are the best sub, and there is no doubt that you are the best person on this earth. Keep doing what you're doing and never give up. That made those 6 days very tolerable. I have never received I've gotten a lot of notes. I've gotten a lot of drawings. I've never received a note that said basically, I didn't like school until you came and started teaching. So when you ask why a sub stays, that's it. Somewhere you reach somebody. You may never know it. And I know you guys know this with what you do day in and day out. You may never reach them. You may never know you do. And you will not reach everybody. I'd like to be able to reach this kid that's out of school suspension. The way the life is going does not look like it's going to end well. We make comments and it's sad, but it's accurate. You're going to read about them someday, but it won't be because they won the Nobel Peace Prize. It's going to be a crime or going to be a murder, something like that. I can't help everybody, but I take it very personally. I believe there are two different types of subs. Somebody that's just a warm body that fills a seat, that the room is still in kind of sort of one piece when they're done. And we got through the day. And then there are the subs, and there are many like myself that really believe in what they're doing and really believe that we can make a difference. We can help you make a difference. We don't have to be there. I don't know how this translates to your monetary system. I get paid $100 a day to substitute teach, which comes out to about 13 something an hour gross pay. To be honest, I can go across the highway down about a block and a half, and I go to the local Target store, and I can work there for more money with benefits. But I teach. Most subs are going to do that. And the passion that they have, I would ask that you try, and as Royston put it, the mentoring makes a difference. I have asked our administrators, can you please, because they come in and they observe the teachers. What are you doing right? What are you doing not so right? How can you improve? And so on like that. I've asked them to observe me. The only way I know if I'm doing something right or not, or if I can improve, if somebody tells me. I have no idea otherwise. I mean, math is always going to be 2 + 2 = 4. I mean, I don't care how different you want to write it. It's still going to be that way. There are certain facts that we cannot get around. But how you teach it may be a different story. Take them under your wings. I was on a substitute committee at our district. I got backdoored into it because I was subbing for the lady that was on the committee. They formed a substitute committee. This was a number of years ago, about 4 now, to talk about why they did not have enough substitutes in the building. And this was long before COVID came around. They had not one substitute on the committee. Well, how do you know what the substitute, what their issues are if you're not talking to them? I know it's a novel concept. Sorry, my sarcasm. Little things like recognition make a big difference. I'm not in it for the money, but somebody who needs that money literally to survive is going to go somewhere else. And you may lose a passionate individual. But you know what? 10 years of being a sub, can they get a cup that says 10-year anniversary on it? Certainly can't cost that much. Ours give out jackets every 5 years, and it has your years. Well, by that point, I should have 3 jackets by now. I'll let you figure out how many I really have. Nothing. It's not about the stuff. It's about, for lack of better words, the recognition and the respect. Are you treating the subs like a warm body? Or are you treating them, as Royston brought up, are you treating them as people, as educators, as somebody who's really wanting to do the job? And it makes a difference. I do believe we do make a difference. I do have to tell you one quick, I could tell stories all the rest of the day, but anyway, I was teaching 6th grade, again, 11 to 12 years old. My belief was everything was going fine. Class seemed to be paying attention. Everybody seemed to be good. And one girl starts screaming. So I look over there And she can't even get the words out. She finally points to the side of her head. Well, one of her bangs came down to about here. The other bang was up here. The fella behind her took a pair of scissors and cut her bangs off on that one side. This is 12-year-old kid. Really? So I got her settled down. I had him go out in the hallway. I believe praise in public, criticize in private. I grew up with that, and I really try to do it as best I can. And to give the kid all the credit in the world, to give him all the credit in the world, I said, did you do that? Yeah. To give him even more credit, I said, why? Well, I was bored. It is an answer. It is not a good answer, but I will give him credit. He at least answered and owned up to it. It was quite interesting to see the repercussions from that. And it was not, it was not on my end any, but the girl's parents almost brought an assault lawsuit against him, which I could very much see what was going on. I could see that happening. You know, they act impulsive. Okay, fine. But you know what? You're 12 years old. This is not kindergarten. You're not 4, 5, 6 years old. You should know a little better. Every student is different. I had one student who actually reminded me of me when I was in school, and the kid was great. And all of a sudden he started acting out. And to me, that's a tip that there's something not right. So I had a team teacher in there, a co-teacher in there. And I said, do you mind if I talk? And he said, no, I got the rest of the class. So I had the young man come out and I said, hey, what's going on? Well, the other guys, I said, I'm not talking to the other guys. I'm talking to you. What's going on? And he kind of mumbled a bunch of stuff and he finally blurted out, well, how would you feel if you have no idea where your dad is, your mom's in jail, you're living with your aunt, and you're not sure if there's going to be enough food for the table tonight? And then immediately put his hand over his mouth like, I shouldn't have said that, and pleaded with me not to tell anybody. Well, I know better. I need to say something. But I talked to him. And he wound up explaining to me what was going on. I didn't have the easiest childhood. The business I told you I ran was my father's. I was a junior and senior in high school, and I was running his business from high school, literally from the building. During any of my breaks, I'd take a stack of quarters. I'd go down to the payphones. I'd call into the office. I'd get the calls. I'd talk to the secretary, get the calls, told her what to do with some. I would make other calls. This is 17, 18 years old. I was doing this. And he looked at me and he said, how'd you make it? I said, I have 4 friends that, frankly, if it weren't for those 4, I literally probably would not be here today. One of whom, unfortunately, later died of AIDS. I said, lean on your friends, but you have to open up. I'm a substitute teacher. I shouldn't be getting in the middle of that, but I'm a human. And to me, recognizing that they are human and that they have just as many problems as we do. I remember back at that age when the worst problem I had was if I had a date for the dance or something, you know, the problems to them, that's massive. As big to them as, am I going to have enough money to pay the mortgage, is to an adult. We can't throw them away. And I told one of the teachers asked me to do a 3-month stint, possibly up to 3 months. Much as I would like to, I'm going to turn her down. Primarily because I tend to get, as you can probably tell, too involved. I take the stuff home with me. And I can't afford to do that at this point. I just can't. she has a great class. I would sub in there on an occasion and anytime they needed, but for that long a time, I just don't think it would work. I guess in the long run, and to wrap up, there are two different types, in my mind, there are two different types of substitutes you all have to deal with. The warm body and the person that cares. And maybe with mentoring, maybe with showing different forms of, I'm going to use the term very loosely, respect, maybe with showing different types of motivation and so on. Somewhere you can turn the warm body into someone who cares. Maybe you won't, but it would obviously help your areas, your school districts. Yesterday, my school district ran 25 jobs district-wide that were unfilled. That's 25 different teaching positions that were filled by committee. So Madhu would go in for the first hour and Royston would go in for the second, Gregory would go in for the third. One of the admins would go in for the fourth. This is not a way to teach kids. Now, COVID has a lot to do with it. The buildings where I am have a fairly high incidence. We are not going to shut down. We have an attorney general in our state that is very firm in suing every school district who has a mask mandate involved, because you need to have individual rights. And if you don't want to wear a mask, you shouldn't have to. I'm watching Royston's face with that one. I can just see the gears going like, really? It's how a lot of us are thinking. Us older folks aren't willing to put ourselves in that role anymore because it's, from a health standpoint, it's too dangerous. My wife was pretty much, I don't want to say she was yelling at me, that's wrong, but she said, you cannot keep going up there like you've been doing. You are going to get sick and weak. It will take, I did the math, it will take 25 working days for me to cover my deductible if I go into the hospital. Were those 25 days worth it? So as substitutes are looking at it from that end right now. So what you all can do, and I hate to put it, it is a two-way street. We have to do a lot too. It's not just you to us. It's both ways. We're a team that we need to work together. I appreciate all the support that I have gotten from the admins throughout the years, and they have been tremendous people to work with. I believe that they also have the best interest in the kids at heart, but sometimes things get lost in the shuffle, so to speak. So I guess in the long, just to wrap up, it's amazing when you treat people with respect, how well it works. Respect is a two-way street. But I thank you, and I say this personally, for all the stuff that you are doing, all the extras that you guys are doing right now as educators, because it doesn't hold a candle to what a substitute is doing. I truly appreciate everything you're doing to try to hold this whole place together. And by that, I mean around the world, because it isn't easy right now. Anybody have any questions or comments? You know, we can chat, whatever. I'll throw it back to Madhu, and she can take it and run with it from there.
Thank you so much, David. That was a wonderful thought sharing with all of us. And I would like to ask, throw it to the floor. Anybody having any question, please go ahead and ask or share your thoughts.
Perhaps I could go and ask one or two things and observations. One of the things I think that gets most in the way of teaching or effective teaching is fear. And that's fear on the part of the students, on the part of the teachers, on the part of the admin system. And I was intrigued to think that you have teachers coming together in teams of two. Our experience is teams of three can be very powerful, where you have the storyteller, listener, and observer, and you can actually help people to move forward and overcome 80% of fear. I think the same is probably true of the students. You know, most of the students enter the classroom in a state of fear often. And again, if you put them together in groups of three, you can dissipate the fear and you can start to recreate joy. And I think it's very challenging for the substitute teacher to drop into that space. I suspect that it might be interesting to try and explore some of those modalities, because I do believe that joy and fun is the pathway to learning. And I think,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
and I think engaging the whole community in terms of this mentoring idea, where you peer group learning, we find that the children learn in peer groups, both positively and negatively. And if you can empower that space, then they often go back and start to work with their own families to create a different moral compass, which can change the community. And again, I think education for women is incredibly important, because they're the anchors in society, they're the survivors, and we disregard the respect that we owe. So I'm really reflecting upon fear. I'm reflecting, so the substitute teacher drops into this space of fear often. And I think it's a great compliment to you as to how you've dealt with it.
Well, I truly appreciate that. There are times when I walk in, I'm thinking, how on earth am I going to pull this off? And I'm sure everybody has at some point or the other. I do tend to tell stories when I teach. I was teaching math. I don't like math. I will freely admit it. I do not like math. I struggle with math as a kid. But you know, when you're doing decimals, I can relate that to money. And now all of a sudden I like it. And I do it that way with the students. I act kind of over the top a little bit. We were doing percentages. Well, percentages is sales tax. It's a commission. It's this, it's that. I brought it in as far as baseball with the hitting percentage, the, 0.28, he's betting a 228. Well, that's a percentage. So bringing it to real world examples of what they need. I've tried to go to it with, when am I ever going to need this stuff? Because at some point, every kid has thought that. Every adult probably has too. And I tell several stories about, I had learned French when I was in grade school, only because they told us to, and they only taught French. Then I get into high school and I needed to take a foreign language. Well, I had 2 years of French already, so let's just keep going with French. Only because I had to take it. 25 years later, literally, well, not quite, well, 25 years after my last class, literally 20 years ago today, first time in our lives, we were in Paris. Amazing how much of that French came back to me. When am I ever going to need this stuff? So I've told these stories to the kids. It also helps to break up the teaching. You're not just yammering on for an hour about percentages or whatever it might be. And substitutes don't really always know. The one thing that I have griped about, can't change it, but I've griped about is I've agreed to sub for this person. I know what they teach. I know what they expect. I know this, all of this stuff. Most of the time I get the lesson plans in advance. So I'm ready when I walk in there. Oh, we're going to switch you to this class instead. So all that prep that I did just flew out the door. You learn to pick up and go again. I had never in my life thought I'd be doing this. This was not on my radar, trust me. But I do believe you are correct. Fear does play a part. And one of the two things, we can either let it run us or we can overcome it. And there have been times in my life I've done both. So, I mean, we all have. But I do thank you.
I do believe, David, there's a book in it. Your story.
Oh, one of the other substitutes and Kelly and I have been together. In fact, the running joke is she is my work spouse. If you've ever heard that phrase or not, she will text me about stuff and vice versa. And my wife said, oh, that's just Kelly. Okay, no big deal. We believe we could write 3 books. What I heard in the classroom, what I heard in the teacher's lounge, and what I heard at the front office. The sad part is nobody would buy it because they would think we made it all up. You can't make some of this stuff up. You just can't.
David, just do it.
It's one of those things I have toyed with for a while. So maybe I'll start to put stuff down and we'll see what happens.
Friends of mine in the US have already published 280 books. And we own a publishing company. So I mean, just do it.
There you go. I know who to look for when it needs editing time.
Well, what you do is you can even self-publish. You get Lightning Source to do the printing. And I think what you have is so valuable to put a stake in the ground.
It is a good thought. Thank you.
Anybody else wants to share anything? No? Okay.
I just, yeah,
Sure.
I want to thank you for presenting and for the opportunity. I've not substitute taught, but I have taught online for a while and in the classroom for a short while in higher education, and have spent most of my career in administration, whether it's running a dual credit program for high school students or doing research and analysis. There's I saw a lot of things, and when you mentioned that we may hear of kids for the wrong reason, I hearken back to a young man who I thought had a very promising future. He was a high school student, and he was taking courses to complete a certification in a field he was really interested in, and he was going to be completing that as he was finishing high school. And then I heard that he got expelled from school for distributing barbiturates. Totally changed his life. Mm-hmm. And that ended his enrollment in the dual credit program because students had to be enrolled in a high school before they could take dual credit courses. So that one decision that he made is going to impact the rest of his life. And it's tragic when things like that happen, because he had such a bright future. And I know his parents were just heartbroken over it, and I just imagine, and I have not heard anything of him since, but you see things like that, and it just makes you have pains, and so yeah.
What, Gregory, if I can ask, what did you teach online?
I've taught history and government online for several years, and survey courses, U.S. history and American government.
Our son is a PhD computer engineer teaching at UMass at Lowell. Wow. And hands-on robotics. His specialty is in robotics. March of 20, when all of this started, they went virtual. And pretty much all of last year, they were virtual. So he called many a time saying, how on earth do I teach a hands-on robotics course virtually? Which is a good, it is a challenge. They did figure it out eventually. And I'm thinking, well, why on earth are you calling me? Because I don't teach robotics to begin with. But they had to completely rethink the course. Right. And how they did it. They eventually allowed one student and him in this massive room, basically the sandbox room, to come in and test it out. And he would give, it eventually worked out, but it was this, how on earth are we going to do this? That's why I was just curious. History and government is a little bit easier online.
It is. And I have a friend who has done math and physics online, and that certainly is more challenging than than what I've my sister-in-law was teaching chemistry online, and that was, although she did not teach the labs, so that was she had actually a condition that she was getting she had allergies to the chemicals that they were using. So somebody else had to teach the labs. But yeah, it's
Yeah, this is, I think COVID just in itself has really forced a lot of places, including education, to take an introspective look to see how can we do this different.
yeah.
I know kids need to be there. I mean, adults need to be together for the social aspect. We are
Mhm.
social creatures. We are not. My wife is in the wall behind me, and she's a chemical engineer. She said, you know, engineers have been, we're introverts from the word go. So not getting around people is not a big deal to us. For some of us
Right.
that are extroverts, it's a big problem. And I say it
Mhm.
somewhat tongue in cheek and somewhat serious. I understand the whole societal aspect of you need to be around people.
I actually wrote a blog post toward the beginning of the pandemic for my office blog, talking about distance learning in K-12 during the pandemic. And I was reflecting on my experiences in online teaching, but also what I've heard, because I have a unique position right now because I work with K-12 accountability reporting, but I bring the higher ed lens to it. And it's an interesting perspective. So.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. It's a lot of things to learn because in India, substitute teachers are very different from what you would be having in the US. And we really, even in public schools, we really don't have substitute teacher. I mean, we wouldn't have people hired, sorry, to be a substitute teacher. That's what I mean. I mean, it would be a teacher of a different subject or a different class who would be a substitute teacher. Yeah. And yeah, and I thank every one of you for attending this very interesting session. Look forward to having another speaker next month. And I would just wish all of you to stay safe and look forward to having all of you next month. Thank you so much.
Sounds
Thank
great.
you
Thank
all.
you.
Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.